Julie. My name is Julie Ramirez, and I have a very, very special co-host today, Tony Ramirez, who is my business partner and my husband. And so I'm really excited to have him join us because we're going to talk about a very important topic about money and marriage. Exciting, right? So we're going to walk through some of the things that we did, that we learned from just our own experiences, being young, being married, not having a plan, and just give you guys some perspective of what you should be thinking about. And so we're going to start off just really quickly talking about when we first got married. Just us bringing our finances together, and then having just the compounding bills of having kids and new things that happened in our journey in life. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and there's not really a more important topic out there, and money is one of the leading causes of divorce. So getting on the same page together is such a critical step.
Yeah, and as savvy as I think we were, I think we made some mistakes along the way, things that we learned generationally from our families, putting our money in places like the bank and not really exploring what other places we could put our money. Also not understanding how important life insurance was until something happened where I lost my mom and dad, and I know you lost your dad. And so we're going to talk about that because I think when we first started, we were making a lot of money. I think Tony and I were each making a substantial amount of income on our own, more than our families made in a household. And so that was really challenging because as we had kids, our income went up, but so did our expenses, and we didn't have good money habits.
I agree. Yeah, early on we did not have the structure or a strategy in place to handle the type of money that we were receiving for our both of our jobs at the time. Now looking back, strategy is super important, and we also, again, we just didn't consistently save every month like we do now, and it didn't understand the importance of consistently saving.
I mean, when I think back, how much money we used to make, I used to make a joke with him, and I'd say, man, if my mom had the kind of income that we had,
right,
she would be doing so much better, making it stretch a lot more and a lot longer. And so we were just busy trying to keep up with our lifestyle, but also keep up with the lifestyle around us. We were young, we were in our 20s, we had kids. Small children, and we fell into the want to drive nice cars, want to have a nice house, and
right. I remember early on we had a choice to make that we went through and we bought a third car when we really didn't need a third car, and we did that while we weren't even planning for retirement at that point. So we made one of the critical mistakes that most couples will do is we'll say, oh, well, this year we'll get a third car. And we weren't really planning for our retirement. We didn't fully fund our IRAs or any of that stuff.
One of the things that I remember was when I was working, they offered a 401k plan at my job, and it was a match. And I remember I didn't take advantage of that because I didn't understand what a 401k was. All I kept hearing was that people were losing their money and their life saving in their 401k when the market crashed. And so, of course, I didn't understand why I still needed to put my money in something like that. But even worse was they were matching whatever I contributed, and I was literally leaving money on the table, and I just did not understand it. I felt like it was just another bill. And so looking back, if I could go back to my 20s, I'd make sure that you put in your budget that you're also maxing out your 401k if your company is matching it.
That's right, yeah. It's very important to take advantage of that match every year because it's really not about timing the market, it's about spending time in the market when you're investing. So that match early on can pay huge dividends later.
And the other mistake was that I heard the fear of people losing their money, and it's about the strategy, and depending on what your situation is, what that money is for. If you're going to be retiring early, the strategy is going to be different than somebody who's about to be retiring later. And so that's the thing is like you've got to understand that there's a method to the madness, there's a process, and you've got to stick to it.
That's true. And now that we've talked about all the, just a few of the mistakes that you and I have made, well, let's talk about what we did to correct that. So what are some of the things that you did or that you helped and assisted with bringing us out of that financial nightmare is really what it was?
So I remember when I lost my job after my dad had passed, we went from my income, which was substantially more, and now we were just living off of your income. And so not only did we lose the one income, but it was less than, than we never even fathomed that we would go down from two incomes to one income.
Correct.
One thing that we did was we were using the credit card that we had to basically charge the kids' daycare on. So we were a month behind on payment, if you remember that.
I do remember, yes, that was awful.
Yeah, so when that happened, we had this huge credit card bill, and I just lost my job, and so we had a lot of debt sort of piling up. And so what I did was I went through our finances and basically called our companies our cable companies and tried to see where we could cut costs at any point. See if we could maybe get a better deal on our cable bill. Maybe we didn't need cable, maybe get rid of it, get rid of some of the subscriptions that we had. And when I did that exercise, I really realized that we were spending money frivolously on things that didn't make any sense. I even remember we had to change the kids' daycare to a different one, and it was significantly cheaper than the one we had the kids at, but it was the same curriculum. It was just a different daycare.
Different daycare, okay.
And I had no idea that all of those things were going to make such an impactful change on our finances. And then, of course, I found a job, but it took me a while to get back to getting that type of income that I had initially lost. But what was good about it is you and I set different expectations that we weren't going to let that happen to us in the past. What happened to us in the past happened in the future. So some of the things that we did was budgeting.
We created a budget. We sat down together and really got on the same page and attacked that debt. And we created this budget, which helped us realize that we needed a strategy going forward. Another thing we did is we made saving a priority every month. There wasn't a month, early on, there was months that would go by without us saving any money. Once we realized that, okay, well, we were spending so frivolously, we made saving a priority. So we started paying ourselves before we paid any of our bills.
Paying yourself first. Let's talk about that. Paying yourself first is going through making sure that you make yourself a priority for your bills, as if you are a bill. And what you need to do is go through your budget and allocate how much it's going to cost to take care of you, whether that's with your 401k, whether that's your life insurance, making sure that you put that in your budget as a bill that needs to be paid.
That's right. And I do hear a lot of folks say that, paying yourself first is not really a feasible thing, but the reality is that if you don't pay yourself first, it costs you everything. And you may not need to pay yourself first this month, but make sure you have a plan in place so that in the near future you will be paying yourself first. There are people that can't pay themselves first now, but make sure you have a plan in place to get to the point where you will pay yourself first.
I think the other thing is people are probably maybe watching this like us and thinking, like when we were younger, we were thinking, well, how am I going to pay myself first? I'm basically just making ends meet. I'm just making it as it is. Well, one thing you have to do is you've got to figure out how to break that cycle.
That's right.
That cycle needs to be broken, because if you can keep yourself on that hamster wheel, nothing is going to change. And with us, with our families, the way we grew up a certain way where we were saving, but we were saving in the bank. We didn't know until we started sitting down with an advisor what was actually available for us, and in our minds, we thought a financial advisor cost us some money. A financial coach costs money, but somebody like us that's an expert can come into your home and talk to you about what you're doing right, what your goals are, and make sure that there's a synchronized plan for it.
That's right, and it's so important to understand, just what's available out there. And understand that you don't have to be the expert. There are people out there that will help you, and they don't cost you any money out of pocket.
And so what I would like to do is just kind of talk about a couple different concepts that we go over with our clients. Where are some of them that you think were game changers for us?
So, I mean, I think one of the biggest important things, so once you realize that, okay, well, you know, hey, we had a problem, it was really a microscope was on our problem when we got down to one income. So the biggest thing that we realized at that point is that we did not have a plan. So obviously that's going to be the first step, is to create the plan. And what I mean by that is figure out, you know, how long is it until you retire? Those kind of things. What does retirement look like for you? Is it, you know, staying at home, quiet, not spending a whole lot of money? Or do you have dreams of traveling the world? Those two retirements are very different, you know, outside looking in. And make sure that both you and your spouse sit down and create this plan together.
I know, like, one of the mistakes we made was, I know at one point I was doing the bills and I was getting really stressed out, and then you took it over because I'm like, you know what, you don't understand, you do the bills, and it would stress you out. Both of us were just never on the same page. I almost felt like if it was out of sight, it was out of mind.
That's
so
right.
I would go and I would spend, and I'd feel good about that. But I had no idea what that impact was going to be on the back end when the bills came in. The other thing is that we were using our credit card quite a bit. We would use our credit card to be a month almost behind and give us some grace to for things that were non-emergency, you know, like non-emergency things, and just buying us some extra time. So one thing that changed was we set up an emergency fund. So if the AC breaks or something happens, we've got money readily available that we don't have to put that stuff on a credit card. The other thing that we did was we set up a strict budget, making sure that we follow it.
Right. You know, to add on to your point about the credit card, I get a lot of folks say, oh, well, I just pay my credit card off, or hey, it's 0% interest. But they don't take it into account that there's a risk level that if you don't pay your monthly payment, those 0% interest can tack on all the way back to the beginning, so you're going to be interest on the payments that you've already made. So there's fine print into all of those things, and I understand the luxury of paying it off every month, and it's easier to carry around a card than it is cash. However, there's a risk associated with it. What happens when you can't pay? So that interest level is there, and typically it's over 20% interest, and yeah, that's crazy.
And so we just want to be able to explain to people that are newly married, or husbands and wives that aren't on the same page, or partners that aren't on the same page. You both have to be involved for it to work.
That's
You've
correct.
got to sit down and figure out what each one of your goals are. His goal is getting out of debt, and that's my goal too, but I also want to be able to enjoy life with the money that we made working so hard. So we've got to find a balance in that. Some people, it's different, you know, maybe they want to create generational wealth for their kids. Maybe they want to create something, a legacy for their family. It's all different. And there's no right or wrong answer. They just have to figure out what that strategy is, and then we figure out a game plan on how to get there.
That's right, and to, you know, just to add on to that, it is very important to set up those defined rules. So if you are more along the lines of saving your money and paying off debt, that's great. You focus on what you're good at. And hey, if you want to talk about quality of life, listen, I don't plan the vacations. She does, because we've been to some great places, and that's because she knows what she's looking for. And I do help with setting up the budget for it, though.
Yeah, so I mean, we play on each other's strengths, and you know, what's good about us is like his strength is my weakness, and vice versa. And so figure that out. But when you have somebody like us that's sitting with you, coaching you, you have somebody that's objective. So there is none of that animosity between the husband and wife as to who's right, who's wrong. There's just facts. We're just bringing facts to the table.
That's right. It's super important to be able to take emotion out of it, which is, you know, it's not easy to do. But at the end of the day, because it's your future, right? It's just the financial future of your family, and what are we leaving to the kids? What are we? A legacy is one of the biggest things for me, I would sacrifice the here and now for a legacy. However, at the same time, we want to do both for sure. So that just brings us to the next slide. So the very first thing we want for families to do is to create that plan, understand what retirement looks like. The next thing is probably the cornerstone of every financial plan is your budget. Allocating certain amount to paying yourself first. Understanding why that's important. That's why we create the plan first, to understand where you want to be. So you understand that it is super important to pay you as a bill. And again, on the same page, you've got to both do the budget. The next thing is understanding about debt. Debt is a family problem. It is not, oh, well, that's her debt because it was her credit card, or you had that before we met,
Student
so
loans,
it's not mine. Having debt is really kind of like swimming in the middle of the ocean with an anchor. You're just not really going to get very far. It just makes it so much harder. But if your family's there, everyone can help and attack this debt. Both spouses agree to the plan. Get out of that debt as quickly as possible.
And it does take a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of things that we had to give up in order to get to that point, but we knew that that was for the better long-term end result. Sometimes I'm like, should we have done, this a little bit more extravagant or that? And then we've got to go back to the fact that we had a long-term plan. That's just a short-term something, and that essentially is going to mess up our plan that we have for the future, long-term, and our goals. So think about that. Think about what each of you want, whether it's something different, and get with somebody like us that can sit together and coach you and really teach you and be objective on what the best thing is.
All right. And now that we're talking about some of the things that, like you said, giving some things up for now, and it's not that you have to give up everything in the present to sacrifice for the future. I think there is a balance there. And, finding your strengths and understanding that we are a team working toward the same goal. Obviously living for the here and now is wonderful. Like I said, we've gone on some great vacations, but we also do that in the same time as we're planning for our future, which makes those times today even that much more sweeter, knowing that we'll be able to continue to do those in the future. So create a plan, set up our budget, and then understanding debt. The next step is just understanding where to put your money so that it works for you. You alluded to this before, where we put all of our money in the bank and didn't understand that it's possible to invest without a 401k. 401k is very important if you have that option at work, but if you don't, are there any other options out there? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. And understanding that we were not experts early on. We didn't understand that, okay, well, there are other retirement options. There are mid-range options, I would say.
I don't think we knew that you could say, if our job didn't offer a 401k, that we still could save for our retirement outside of our job. That's one of the big misconceptions that people have, is that if their company doesn't offer it, then they don't have a way to save. But you do, and we have different avenues that we can walk through and talk about what's the best for you.
Right, and there are some individual accounts that have great tax implications for you, and whether it's growing tax-free with a Roth IRA, or maybe you need to defer the tax this year with a traditional plan. So definitely a lot of good information out there. Just find a coach that will be able to sit down and talk to you and guide you through those things.